The scope settings give you complete control over how classification levels and restrictions are applied in your organization's Confluence instance. Instead of a one-size-fits-all approach, which is pretty restrictive, with the scope settings you can apply levels and restrictions across your entire Confluence instance or the specific spaces of your choosing. In this video, I'm going to give you a quick tour of the scope settings and talk you through how to manage everything globally or adopt a space-by-space approach. So with that being said, let's jump in. First, we need to access the Compliance app, and we can do this by clicking Apps at the top of the screen here, and then into Compliance. Once we're into the app, click into Settings, and then we want to navigate to Scope here. Now in this instance, I've already got my level schemes and my restriction schemes set up, and this is needed before you go into the scope settings and start configuring. If you've not set up your level schemes or your restriction schemes, I'd recommend taking a look at our documentation, and a link is available in the video description below, and this is where you can learn more about the level schemes and restriction schemes and how you can set them up. So back to the scope settings, here we have two options. First, I could manage my classification levels and restrictions globally, meaning that the levels and restrictions will be the same across the entire Confluence instance and all of its spaces. And this is great if you want to keep it consistent or your data handling policies require a more standardized approach. Or, on the other hand, you could customize the levels and restrictions on a space-by-space basis. This is a more flexible approach, and it will allow you to make adjustments based on the needs of specific teams or departments. For example, you might have a department that only needs to use a certain number of classification levels, and they have their own requirements for page restrictions. With this option in the scope settings, you can easily customize compliance to meet the needs of that team, and it will only apply to that space. So let's start with the first option, managing everything globally. For this, I'd recommend using the default level scheme and restriction scheme, which can be configured in the level scheme and restriction scheme settings you see on the left-hand side. However, if you want to create your own custom level schemes or restriction schemes and use these globally, you can easily do that. So first, start by ensuring the Manage Globally option is enabled, and then we'll just click Confirm here to enable that. And you can see on the right-hand side here, you can select the levels and restriction schemes that you want to apply globally. Once these are selected, it's active across your Confluence instance. And here you can see we have the default level schemes and restriction schemes active across Confluence. And that's it. That's the global option set up and ready to go. So it's nice and easy. And now we'll move on to the second option, which is more customized to individual spaces. And this will take a little bit more time to configure, but it gives you that extra flexibility. For this, you want to create custom level schemes and restriction schemes for use in specific spaces. And going to the earlier example of the department having specific requirements, you would create a level scheme and restriction scheme for that department first. As mentioned before, I'm not going to cover schemes in detail in this video, but if you want more information about them, you can find the necessary information in the links in the video description. So once your level schemes and restriction schemes have been created, we'll come back to the scope page here, and we'll ensure that the Manage Globally option is turned off. And by doing so, this automatically activates the space level settings. So in this example, I'm going to add the Human Resources level scheme to the Human Resources space. I'll start by activating compliance for Human Resources. And then here I now have the options to select the level scheme and restriction schemes for that space. Now under the level schemes, I'll open the drop-down and select the HR level scheme. If you already have classification levels applied in this space, or it was using a different scheme before, you do need to migrate the pages across. And this will mean moving some classification levels across to another classification level if need be. So, and this is really easy to do, so you just use the tool that appears on the screen, like so, and we're just going to change these around. Press migrate, and that'll move it across, and the level scheme is now active. We would just repeat the process again for the restriction schemes, again choosing from the drop-down menu the one that we want to choose, and then once that's selected, that is then active across that Confluence space. So that's just one space here. As you can see, there are more spaces available, and I can go through and customize each one of these one by one if I wish. And there you are. You're now fully versed in the scope settings in Compliance for Confluence and can choose the approach that's best for you and your organization. If you're new to compliance and you're considering trying it out, you can get a free 30-day trial on the Atlassian Marketplace by following the link in the video description below. And just remember, we're here to help you get the most out of compliance. So if you want to learn more about any of the features in this product, be sure to check out our user guides by following the link shown on the screen now. Or if you have any questions, just send an email to support@atfox.io and one of our customer support team will be happy to help.